So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us today for our third in the Atlantic Women's Business Series, Women in Science and Technology Leading the Way in Entrepreneurship. My name is Rose Fitzpatrick, and I work with the PEI Business Women's Association, coming to you today from the Rural Women's Business Center in beautiful Bedeck, PEI, Central Bedeck. I'm the PEI project coordinator for the Atlantic Canadian Women in Growth Partnership. The Atlantic Women's Business Series is just one of a number of initiatives that the partnership, which is a 3-year project funded by the federal government of Canada through the Women's Entrepreneurship Strategy. Our focus is on underrepresented women and groups within our entrepreneurial ecosystem within Atlantic Canada, like science, technology, mathematics, and engineering. Our partnership allows us to share networks, resources, and expertise between women's business organizations in our region to increase our capacity to support women in startup and growth phase businesses. So before I introduce our panelists for today, I'd like to take a quick moment to introduce my colleagues from the Atlantic Canada Women in Growth Partnership. Firstly, maybe you can just give a wave. I'd like to welcome Sarah Thompson, our project lead from the Newfoundland and Labrador Organization of Women Entrepreneurs, NLOWE. Denise Williams is our project coordinator with the Center for Women in Business Nova Scotia, and Isabel Arsenault from Women in Business New Brunswick. And they'll be helping me throughout the session today to keep an eye on our chat and Q&A rooms so we can get your questions in here. And we do encourage each and every one of you to share your contact information within the chat room, which you will find on the bottom of your screen if you haven't already. And for about the last 20 minutes or so, we're going to be opening things up so you can pose your questions to our panelists. And to do so, you can click on the Q&A button on the bottom of your screen as well. And I think if time allows, we will have the opportunity to bring anyone in who would like to do a bit of a live question for our panelists too. So we'll see how our time goes on that. So we've seen more evidence in recent years that supporting women entrepreneurs is a priority for governments and for countries around the world, many developing policies and programs for women, including Canada with the Women's Entrepreneurship Strategy, which aims actually to double the number of women entrepreneurs by 2025. However, we do know that we have a ways to go in that. And the Women's Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub recently released its first annual report, the State of Women's Entrepreneurship in Canada 2020, which states, among many other things, that while Canadian women entrepreneurs are growing in numbers that are starting businesses faster than men, gender inequity in STEM business owners continues to be an issue. Women entrepreneurs continue to face significant challenges in typically male-dominated tech industries at higher rates than in other industries. And the challenges are wide in scope. They include everything from a lack of training to gender bias, and we know trouble in raising capital as well. However, we are very fortunate today to have an amazing panel of Atlantic Canadian women business leaders, innovators, mentors, joining us to talk about some of the exciting things that they're doing in business and how they're doing it. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce each of our panelists, and perhaps I'll start with you, Cathy. Cathy Simpson is an Atlantic Canadian IT leader who has dedicated her career to building the region's tech capacity. She is the CEO of Tech Impact, a private sector-led industry group focused on growing the tech sector in Atlantic Canada. Prior to that, Cathy was the Vice President, People and Culture with T4G Limited, one of the largest privately held IT firms in the region with clients throughout North America. Cathy is also the founder of Up Plus Go, an organization providing leadership and self-discovery programs for high school girls, introducing them to STEM, entrepreneurship, leadership by building employability skills and ensuring that girls see new educational and career possibilities through experiential training. Cathy is the board chair of the New Brunswick Innovation Foundation, an independent not-for-profit organization or corporation rather that invests in new growth companies and applied research activities. She was one of the first co-founders of Propel ICT, Atlantic Canada's original tech accelerator, and she continues to mentor and advise startup entrepreneurs and students in the region. Cathy began her career at NBTel and Innovatia, where she helped launch Canada's first IPTV service and other innovative consumer products. She's a graduate of FC Manning School of Business at Acadie University and lives with her family in Rothsay, New Brunswick. So welcome, Cathy. Crystal Trevors is owner and CEO of Stepscan Technologies, a licensed medical device manufacturing company located here in PEI. Through leveraging a $1.4 million Atlantic Innovation Fund award, she has attracted investment funds to build a pressure-sensitive floor tile system and software that tracks and analyzes how people walk. The Stepscan mobility assessment technology is recognized by both the US FDA and Health Canada as a Class 1 medical device. Stepscan technology is currently being used in hospitals and clinics internationally, with applications ranging from pre-surgery planning, post-operative assessment of cerebral palsy children, stroke rehabilitation, concussion screening, and fitting of prosthetic limbs. The company's most recent application is an accidental fall assessment tool for identifying high-risk fallers in senior care facilities. Crystal has a diverse background in science and business spanning over 25 years, working in both the private and public sectors. She started her career as a research assistant and biologist in immunology and molecular biology for the aquaculture and agriculture industries. She's worked as an operation analyst with the Canadian Food Inspection Agency and as a senior consultant with PEI accounting and management consulting firm McPherson Roach Smith and Associates. Crystal has a BSc from the University of New Brunswick, an MSc from the Atlantic Veterinary College at UPEI, an MBA from the University of Guelph. She's a member of the Order of the Wallace McCain Institute and currently sits on the board of Biathlon PEI. Welcome, Crystal.
Thank you.
And joining us from Charlottetown today, anyway, has her two places, Newfoundland and PEI. Deirdre Ayre is the head of operations at OtherOcean Group Canada, which develops video games and conducts quality assurance for big name clients such as Disney Interactive, Microsoft, Major League Baseball, among many others. In 2006, Deirdre became a studio head for the OtherOcean Interactive after conducting the due diligence and spearheading the establishment of its PEI studio. In 2007, she oversaw the establishment of OtherOcean's video game testing company, Sculpin QA, followed by the establishment of OtherOcean's second development studio in St. John's, Newfoundland in 2008. Deirdre is responsible for all aspects of Canadian operations for all three companies and has recruited talent to Atlantic Canada from all over the world. She has 25 years experience in the entertainment industry, primarily in public relations, marketing, and sales. She's held positions in the areas of business development with Hospitality, Newfoundland, Industry Canada, and the Y Enterprise Center. Deirdre is a graduate of Ryerson University with a degree in radio and television. She's a member of the board of the Canadian Interactive Alliance, the Canadian Cultural Human Resource Council, and the selection committee of the Genesis Center at Memorial University in Newfoundland. So welcome, Deirdre.
I have to pop in there because that bio is about 15 years old.
Oh, well, perhaps you can get an update from that.
Yeah, no, honestly. Anyway, it's fine, but a lot has changed.
I'm going on what I was said. So
yeah,
anyway,
I don't know. I think somebody Googled for that one. Okay, thanks.
Sorry about that. You can give us an update. And last but not least, joining us from San Francisco by phone today, due to a few technical glitches, we're welcoming Gabrielle Masson, who's founder and CEO of Colorsmith Labs in Nova Scotia. Her responsibilities include business development and new project exploration. Gabrielle is a graduate of the Faculty of Chemistry at Dalhousie University and Chemical Engineering Technology at Seneca College. Gabrielle is a longtime advocate of vision care with Prevent Blindness America and the Canadian National Institute of the Blind. She's acted as president of a low vision scholarship organization funding Atlantic Canadian University students. And although still quite young, she is an experienced scientist with a number of awards and honors for her work in vision care and innovation. She's spoken passionately on behalf of North American vision care standards. And Gabrielle, as I mentioned, is joining us from California today. They're on business. And so I'm going to get into our first question for our panelists, and perhaps Cathy, I'll start with you. So I would like to know some of the motivational factors that led you, the skills and business ideas that perhaps led you to become an entrepreneur within the tech industry, and why you went in the direction that you did.
Well, thanks for having me today. I started in the tech industry 30 years ago this year, and my plan was to be in it for 2. I was coming to NBTel, stay for a couple of years. They were a great company. And then I would head back to Nova Scotia, or maybe even go back home to Newfoundland. And 30 years later, 3 kids, 2 marriages. This one's a good one. I'm still here. And the reason why I stayed in the tech industry is because you can have any kind of background in order to work in the tech industry. I mean, I kind of can't imagine that I was 32 years old, 33 years old, launching the first IPTV service over broadband and doing it in St. John, New Brunswick. Like, kind of that still is a pinch moment to get to work with people like Jerry Pond and the late Jack Travis and so many others that had a vision for what technology could do for the region. So they just provided so many opportunities, I couldn't leave. And then I went to work for T4G, and it was one of the biggest data analytics companies in private companies, a boutique firm. And I was a business analyst. I was a project manager. I led developers and architects and ended up spending 12 years as a vice president there. But I don't have a degree in analytics or a degree in computer science. I'm a business grad. But what I discovered was you need this whole team-based approach if your business is going to be successful. And you need technologists, but you need salespeople and marketing people and customer services people. So that's how I stayed, and I kept finding my niche to be able to do that. And I've spent all 30 years in entrepreneurship, working with entrepreneurs, trying to grow a new business out of Atlantic Canada. And then finally in 2014, I was doing some leadership training with a bunch of women, senior women in New Brunswick and some from Nova Scotia. And it was over a 6-month period of time. And it wasn't about how to better manage the boardroom. It was about your own personal self. And I was around all these women for 6 months. And I kind of had this moment of, where have you been all my life? Even though I've worked with women, the tech industry, and I was a vice president for many years, when you're at that level, it's a lot of men. And I worked with amazing men too. But I really started to find out then that I needed to get more women in this industry. That needed to be the last third of my career. That's how I need to be able to contribute to the industry. So when I was surrounded by all these women and the more work that I did about my passions, I discovered I need to work with high school girls. I need to get businesses understanding that we need to get more women and girls in technology. And that was my path. So I started Up and Go, which is my business. I went down to the US, did some training with a great organization out of there in Stanford. I came back, found a friendly high school and said, I've learned some things. I've worked in business for 25 years. I think I've got an idea. Would you find some high school girls that might meet with me for the next 6 to 8 weeks? And that's how it all got started. And now I have corporate sponsors that run programs. And due to COVID, we were in the middle of delivering a program in the spring. We had to turn that online. I had 3 university to the students this summer. We've completely pivoted our entire business online, and I've got 2 national corporate sponsors, and we're starting programs in January. So it's enabling me to actually expand my business faster than I thought I would ever do. So that's my focus on Up and Go. But this is all about how do we drive the sector, and we do not have enough visible minorities, women, immigrants that are finding their path into this industry. So by working with Tech Impact and now working with high school girls, I feel like in my 50s, because I'm 52, this is where I'm going to be focusing all of my energy. So that's what motivates me and gets me out of bed in the morning.
Sorry. We're glad that it does. So thank you for that, Cathy. Crystal, some of the motivational factors and maybe skill sets and business ideas that led you to Stepscan Technologies. Can you give us a little insight into that?
Sure. Yeah, so my story is a little bit different, and I definitely became an entrepreneur by accident. And like Stepscan for me, and like business, and having a business that's tech business is the integration of science and business. I love both. So for me to be able to run a tech company is really the combination of 2 passions. I think maybe that when I look back at my life and where the biggest milestone moment was, is there was a very pivotal time in my career where I was trying to decide if I was going to do a PhD or if I was going to do an MBA. And it was a little bit of a leap of faith, and some life happens, and I decided to move forward with doing an MBA, which really just steered the path of my career in a completely different manner. And I had worked for the Canadian Food Inspection Agency for almost 10 years when my job got relocated to Ottawa. And literally that's what all of a sudden it's like, well, I'm not moving to Ontario. I have a life in PEI and a family. And I went into the private sector. And for me, the business started with just I had done 50 business plans for entrepreneurs. I worked with them every day. I did market assessments. I did business plans. I did feasibility studies. And when I was done, I'd say, here you are, here's your plan. It looks awesome. Good luck. You know, or sometimes it was, this isn't going to work. Not a good idea. But Akoya introduced me to a gentleman that had an idea for the flooring system. And I did all this work on this project, and the gentleman was not a business person and really wasn't going to start the business with it. And I just thought, this is something I can't let go of. This is so exciting to me, and there's nobody that's going to take it and run with it. I have to do this. I mean, that's literally what happened with me. It wasn't a dream and an idea that came in my head. It was an opportunity that was presented to me, and I just thought, I can't let this pass by. I have to do it, right? And so I just jumped in. And so that was 2012. So it's 8 years later, and I love it every day.
Well, so that's good to hear. And often when opportunities do present themselves, there you go. Time to jump. So thanks for that, Crystal. Gabrielle, I think we have you on the line here. So maybe if you can, I'll read the question here again for you. Some of the reasons why you took your skill sets and came up with the business idea that you have with Colorsmith Labs.
Yeah, perfect. So first, thank you so much for inviting me onto this call. I'm super excited to be on this panel with everybody. Some amazing stories so far. So what really got me involved with Colorsmith, it was really just, you know, I just felt compelled, like very similar to what Cathy was mentioning. You just, you know, you care so much about something, you just feel drawn to a problem, and, you know, you almost go through a little bit of obsession, right? Like you have to, in order to, you know, build basically, you know, a thing out of nothing. And that's really what happened with Colorsmith. I've been so involved with vision care my whole life. I went partly blind when I was a kid. Due to an undiagnosed vision condition. And, it just caused major impact. And the fact that it could have been avoided just annoyed me, and it really kind of instilled from a very young age this drive that I have to do something about it. I can't just sit around and wait for it to be fixed. So I studied hard in chemistry. I was all ready. I was going to go to become an eye doctor, and I was going to help people that way. But then I started taking some business classes at Dell just because, I was like, hey, if I'm going to open a clinic one day, I got to learn how this is done. So after taking some business courses, it just, I started learning about entrepreneurship. And it seemed so, in the beginning, like I was just so not bought in by it. But, it was after connecting this, this thing that's been driving me my whole life, my, my want to improve the state of vision care in Canada and the US, that really just, connecting those dots between entrepreneurship and a passion that, once that happens, there's really no turning back. So I started Colorsmith as a sole female founder, armed with only my chemistry education, which at that point I did have a lot of it. But, I said, I really just looked at, a problem. So for me, it started with color blindness. And I recognize, I don't know if you guys have ever seen it, but there are those YouTube videos of the people who they have a color vision deficiency and they put on those sunglasses, and it actually helps them regain some color vision. And just, the small bit of, color recognition that they gain from wearing that product, it causes such an emotional reaction. And you see videos of people crying, and it just, it hit home so hard. But, I still was just the same problem. I'm like, why is this only in the form of glasses? Like, why is this, and not just glasses, they look like sunglasses. And it just bothered me because my whole life I've just been, seeing products that just don't really, work for people with actual vision care problems. So I said, you know what? This is just on the basis, like these glasses function on the basis of optical filtering. Let's get that optical filtering into contact lenses. And it was just, that very innocent scientific, stake in the ground where I was like, I'm going to make this happen. And from it was born Colorsmith, right? And Colorsmith not only focusing on color vision deficiencies, but now gaining some major industry extraction and looking at using this optical filtering technology to address a whole battery of vision care problems outside of just color blindness too. So, the reason I'm in San Francisco is because we're piloting with one of the largest vision care companies in the world. And I'm super looking forward for that project to be, completed and for this product to be launched. And, maybe I didn't become an eye doctor, but I did, I'm at least on my way to, doing what I set out to do, which is help improve the state of vision care.
Excellent. Thanks, Gabrielle. And we're super excited for you too. Deirdre, maybe I'll get you to step in here now and perhaps you can rectify the old.
Oh no, it's fine. The general story is fine. It's just, it's fine. It's just quite an old bio. That's also, it was kind of funny. Like all the organizations that were mentioned, things, I'm not involved with those now, involved with other ones, but that's all fine. Doesn't matter. Yeah, for me, I grew up in Newfoundland in an entrepreneurial business family. And although my interest led me to go to Ryerson and do radio and television, which really, at that time, Ryerson was called a Polytechnical Institute. So I suppose in some respects, it was production. So I certainly wasn't intimidated by technology, but I was more interested really in the creative side of radio and television. And when I went back to Newfoundland, I did a lot of, if you remember back in those days, the late 80s, for those of you old enough, it was sort of the rage at the time was all corporate video production, and every business was running out and getting a corporate video developed. And that was sort of the world I was in. I was writing and producing corporate videos for various advertising agencies and that kind of thing. But that was kind of a funny stepping stone because I was quite good at writing, it turned out. I didn't really realize that was sort of a special skill, but I think probably at my age, and I'm sure most of the people on this panel would agree that if you can write, whether you can yourself or whether you have somebody on your staff who can, it's actually quite important. And a talent that it seems quite a few people struggle with. So that actually led me to getting involved more with sort of corporate communications separate from the creation of videos, let's say. And I ended up working for organizations like Hospitality Newfoundland and Labrador, and Industry Canada, and the Y Enterprise Center, all of those positions, I was working with entrepreneurs, either helping them grow their businesses or helping with business plans and that kind of thing. And I really caught that bug. It was very natural for me, I think, because of my family. At the same time, my brother had started a business in California, and I was always quite interested in it. And we had talked lots and continued to talk over probably a span of 15 years about me being involved with his business out there. But it didn't really make sense. I mean, I was in Newfoundland with 2 small children. I was divorced, and I didn't have an easy step to get myself to California, and really didn't want to. I was quite interested. I quite love where I came from, but I was also, of course, that generation of watching all my friends go away, and so out migration and brain drain was a big, was a motivator for me to want to work toward changing that. And I think that's really how I came into this. So going back to my brother for a minute, so he was, growing a successful business in California, and I was, talking to him a lot about, geez, do you think we could ever do this at home? Could we do this in Newfoundland and Labrador? Could we do this in Atlantic Canada? And eventually, sort of many years later, over beer at 3 o'clock in the morning on a trip to California to visit Andrew and his family, we cooked up a plan for me to at least do the research and due diligence to start a video game business in Atlantic Canada. And that might seem like it's kind of far away from radio and television or production or whatever, but it really wasn't. It wasn't a giant leap. In fact, several of the people that I was closest to at Ryerson ended up in the video game development business, and sort of through the same path as me. They weren't necessarily, they weren't anti-video games, but they weren't necessarily thinking of themselves as working in that industry so much as they had done a sort of technical production creative degree. The video game industry offered a lot of opportunity. And again, most of us who had gone through that program were good writers, because that was part of the prerequisite to the course, or to the degree. So anyway, so a lot of us sort of ended up in this field. But again, I was very interested, and it's kind of an overused word, but passionate about trying to keep young people in Atlantic Canada. And so I developed this business plan. I was fortunate to be able to sort of have my brother as a mentor, and to use his connections really to publishers and that sort of thing. And we were able to start the company. And we chose Charlottetown to open, not Newfoundland. We had far more support. And it's slightly off topic, but I'm sure it kind of isn't in many ways, right? But we had lots of doors closed actually to us in Newfoundland and Labrador at the time, and lots of doors were open to us on PEI. So that's why we ended up starting the business here, never meaning to burn any bridges in Newfoundland and Labrador, and within a year or two we were opening a business there as well. But yeah, we jumped off first in PEI because of the support and collaboration we found in the community here, whether it be government or the educational institutes and that kind of thing, because we knew we had a lot of work to do to we knew that our work was going to need to be collaborative. I mean, we were starting something that really hadn't been done in Atlantic Canada, with the exception of 1 or 2 small companies.
Right, thanks. And, that certainly tells us that support is very important. Good segue into my next question. Cathy, I'll go back to you. And maybe you could just, I know our time is flying by, which I knew it would, and I don't want to take up all the space myself by asking questions, so I will want to open it up soon. But maybe you can give a quick example, brief example of any resources, could be a person, organization, what have you, that you tapped into along the way to overcome challenges that you may have had in getting to where you are today?
Well, one of the beauties of Atlantic Canada is there's a really rich ecosystem. So we have accelerators, we have funders, both provincial funders like the MBIF and NovaCorp and others. And now we actually have more funding mechanisms coming from the private sector, whether it be angels or otherwise. So you've got to get really good at networking so you understand what kind of support systems are out there. So cash is one thing. I always think about when you're trying to solve a problem, does your solution have a problem that needs to be solved? So you need customers, you need capital, you need talent. So the capital is there. The talent is the next piece. And so you've got to be connecting with mentors. You've got to be connecting with the post-secondary educational systems to find students, to find immigrants, people who are moving here, and others in the industry. And those are mission critical. If you don't have the talent, you're not going to build out a solution. And it is absolutely one of our biggest challenges here in Atlantic Canada right now is making sure that we have enough talent and students going through post-secondary education with the kinds of talents that these sorts of companies that Deirdre, Crystal, Gabrielle talked about. And we've got to do a really good job of making sure that we're getting the talent here in Atlantic Canada, or you can't grow. It's really that simple. But we have an ecosystem that's alive and well, so you have to tap into it. And there's ways to do that. This is such a welcoming innovation ecosystem.
Thank you for that, Cathy. Crystal, what can you offer briefly on that? Someone or a resource that you were able to tap into to help you along the way? I know the AIF Fund Award was one of the initial things, but
yeah, the capital. I find in Atlantic Canada, when you have a dream, there's lots of resources to sell that dream to. So yeah, there's like a really welcoming environment for raising capital and starting a new business. And again, I had kind of the same challenge with, we had a $1.4 million AIF, an investment in like $2 million, and it was 6 months and I hadn't hired one IT developer, not one developer. So it was really tough. Who would have thought your project start would be delayed because it's going to take 6 months to a year just to find your lead developer. And we ended up, our first 2 hires were from China. And we went through the whole immigration process, and that's what it took.
Yeah, sometimes. And we know that, as Cathy said, attracting the talent is key for sure. Gabrielle, I'll go to you if you can still hear us on the phone. Maybe some of the supports that you've been able to tap into, if you could just very briefly give us something on that would be great.
Yeah, for sure. So I would say when it comes to, we're all kind of, we're all in STEM. I would say that the biggest support I got directly related to STEM was coming from 2 spots. So the Canadian National Research Council and ACWGP. Mind you, Colorsmith has had such a huge amount of, support from other organizations and from the private sector as well. But in the initial days of kind of getting started, when, you have an idea, but you don't have an application and you don't have, even technology fully vetted yet, and there's just such a long way to go. It was, the Canadian National Research Council and it was ACWGP, those 2 government sectors just being able to, guide you through the basics, walk you through comparables, and help you understand what it's going to take to actually start this. That was, I'd say for me, by far the best initial kickoff support I got. Of course, you need money as well, right? So, there's a ton of, non-dilutive funding options and competition. So overall, when I first started Colorsmith year 1, I went on a full-blown competitions, it basically just, a bunch of competitions. I won the Volta cohort, $25,000. That gave us the seed money we needed to then leverage with IRAP and then move into getting some private sector funding through the Creative Destruction Lab, CDL, where I got to meet a ton of investors. And that started the basis, and that foundation of support has really propelled Colorsmith to where we are now. But I really wouldn't be, in the position I am right now if it wasn't for that initial support from the Canadian National Research Council and ACWGPP.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Gabrielle. And I know, Deirdre, you did speak to that as well within the last question. I think what I'm just going to reach out to our participants. If you do have any questions, just to remind you to put them in the chat, in the Q&A room, as well as the chat room. And I'll get Sarah to monitor those for me if anything does come through there. You can just flag me on that if I don't see it. One thing that I would like to, I guess we can't really have a discussion about business or entrepreneurship or really anything right now without talking about the challenges that our world is facing through COVID-19. Maybe we could discuss briefly too some of the challenges that you may be facing within science and technology. It may not be the same as other industries, I'm not sure, but maybe what have you struggled with, what have you pivoted towards, and how are you getting through that? And maybe I can throw that to you, Deirdre, to talk about that.
Sure. Well, I'm going to speak on it sort of from two perspectives. So for the video game industry in general has pivoted well. The sales for many of the larger companies certainly are up. And I think just because of the way we're used to working and the fact that we are in the technology sector, we've been able to be quite resilient through this whole catastrophe. That said, I do quite a bit of advocacy work nationally for smaller companies and startups, and that's where I'd say I have concern. And I would just say that it really just depends. I think we're very project based in our industry, and it seems like the companies that have struggled it depends on where they were in their project schedule. If they were onboarding people, in some cases it was more difficult because they weren't able to get together and work in a group. If you were a company like ours, who are already very, everybody knows everybody, it was easy to get people home and working together because they know each other already from being in studios together, and they know how people work, and we were able to just sort of continue on the project, we had done a big release about a year ago, and we were just doing additional content and are continuing to do additional content for that particular project and supporting that project, and it's selling really well. So for us, for our company personally, we really have been extremely fortunate. But if you were in an earlier stage of production, I think in many cases from the businesses that I've been speaking with, it seems to have been more difficult for them, not being able to meet. I mean, I know we've all sort of gotten used to communicating the way we are now, but in the earlier stages, some people were really we're in the middle of talking to funding partners, or we're trying to find publishers for their projects, and that they would normally be doing that at international trade shows all over the world. Everything was canceled. Online stuff hadn't been set up yet. A lot of them, we're losing their staff because they were on contract and they weren't able to keep them or what have you. And so it's been more challenging for those more in the startup in the startup sector of our industry, if you want to call it that, or if they were at a point where they had a finished product but hadn't found a publisher yet and weren't self-publishing. That was difficult. But really, when we compare ourselves to other industries, the video game sector has done extremely well through this. So I don't even like to take up time talking about it too much, to be honest, because I feel like so many other companies have struggled so much, and they're the ones whose voices really need to be heard. I mean, I guess there's one thing I will say though, is those companies that have been able to be resilient through this, we have to, whether it happens to be mine or whether it happens to be somebody else's, it's important that we continue to value those companies because they have been resilient. These are the companies that are helping keep our economy going too, right? So we don't want to forget about them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. I'm going to jump in here and grab a few questions from our chat room here. I know Mona has a question here. I'm not sure if it's directed to anybody specifically. The question is, what was your major challenge as a woman? I'm assuming as a woman entrepreneur. Maybe Cathy, I'll throw that out to you.
I just don't think of myself as a woman entrepreneur. So you have to just don't have that mindset. I don't like labels. I do believe that if you are given an opportunity and that door opens, then I'm going to go crash right through it. And everyone should be doing that. So don't put a label on yourself as a female entrepreneur. Be proud of it. Am I the first CEO of Tech Impact? Yes. Am I the first chair of the NBIF? Yes. Have I started my own business? Yes. But I don't put myself in that category because then people start to think about you differently. So I don't wear it. I'm proud of it. There's no doubt about it. Am I running a business to try and get more women who can be successful in this industry? Absolutely. And I make no apologies about that. But walk into that room with the same sales pitch as any other man's going to walk in that room, use the same approach. And I can remember, I mean, this is a little embarrassing when I think about it now, but I can remember going through a phase when all I did was wear suits to try and look like a man so that I would be more accepted. And that would have been like in the early 2000s. Like there was no way I was wearing a dress or a skirt. It was navy blue, white. I could have worked at IBM. Then I can tell you, I went through a phase where there wasn't a day when I wore a pair of pants. It was a dress, and it couldn't be prettier because I was just like, this is me. I'm a woman and I really like pink. And that's the logo of my company, a bright pink. So, those sorts of things can get in your mind and can influence the way you're thinking about your own business. So just get rid of it would be one thing that I would be suggesting.
Thank you, Cathy. Good advice. BJ Daniel Chuck, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, probably not. She or he is saying, in a strong innovation climate with a strong investor presence, have you managed to maintain majority control of your business? And on that theme, are there any key lessons or experience about dealing with investors that you can share? Maybe I could throw that one out to you, Crystal.
Sure. Yes. So I do have majority control of my business. I feel like I've been very fortunate. So my investment has been non-dilutive sources of funding and some friendly angel investors in the area and in Atlantic Canada. And I haven't had to go like to the BC level. I guess my experience with, if you didn't have the experience in negotiating with investors, I guess you would probably want to have some sort of mentor that does have that experience that could help you at least vet some deals. And the best place to be in a strong position is to be raising money when you don't need it. If you're in a period in your business where you're really desperate for funds, or it's going to show, and it's all laid on the table, your financial statements, everything's out there, so there's no secrets. So yeah, I guess I would just encourage you to really plan ahead and raise the money early, and don't get too hung up on over raising and diluting yourself a little bit to find yourself in a bad position later where you have to raise a second round because you've run out of money. That's the situation you don't want to get into.
For sure. Thanks. Question from Jess Rice here. My question for the panelists today: what advice would you give a youth entering the workforce in a technology field as a new hire? I could throw that out to any of you to jump in on it, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Takers for that one?
I'll talk about one area that's probably a little unexpected, and that is sales.
Yes.
So when you're at university, you go to class, you want to get great grades, you want to enjoy yourself on campus. Like, there's no question. COVID times are different, don't get me wrong. So I'm not going to focus in specifically on that. But when you are leaving the university or college environment and going into a business, customer skills, being able to talk to customers, are absolutely paramount. And sales is a science and an art form. And let me tell you, it is one of the most in-demand skills in Atlantic Canada right now. And when I look at the companies that the NBIF funds, and we have a number of companies that we've invested in, what do we end up talking the most about? Sales, business development, networking, and right now, how am I going to sell my products remotely? So if you're someone who enjoys being in front of customers, likes to ask questions so that you can then kind of really dive into what is that customer's problem and does my technology solve that problem, you will have a fantastic path into the tech sector. And it is in such high demand right now. And we have this old Herb Tarlick car salesman kind of old school mindset that goes along with sales that couldn't be further from the truth. So really work on opportunities to work on your communication skills. You will benefit so much.
That was awesome, Cathy. 100% agree.
Yeah, I'd agree with that too. As somebody who did work in radio sales, actually, I am the female Herb.
There you go.
Thank you, female Herb.
Yeah, could I just mention something about that for a sec? Because it is super important. In every sector, good salespeople, and it is a really undervalued job, or people often look down their nose at salespeople. But it is super important. I remember my father saying to me one time, it doesn't matter what your university degree is, none of that, it can matter, but if you are good at sales, you will always have a job, everybody's always looking for a good salesperson. But the one thing I wanted to mention about that too, one of the things that's been really successful or helped with the success of our company is the fact that a lot of our sales come from the hub of the industry, of course, which is in California and parts of Asia. And we've always had employees in those. We don't have an employee currently in Asia, but we do have operations in Asia, and we have our operations in California. And I often think about that because so many businesses in Atlantic Canada have a salesperson in Atlantic Canada who goes off to a conference or goes off to try and sell. And I often wonder, why don't more businesses have a salesperson where their market is? And that doesn't suit everybody's particular business, but there are lots of businesses that you do think, it's when I've mentioned that, it's been sort of a light bulb moment for people. It's hire a salesperson in the place where you have customers.
Yeah.
Go figure.
Yeah. Thank you.
And then can I just jump in super quick on that? So I'm also just going to echo what everyone's mentioning here. Yes, sales experience is super important. I think it also is the skill set you need. If you were going to be starting your own company, you may not be selling a product necessarily, but you're selling the company at a really early stage to investors, to government agencies, to support groups. You're networking about it, and it's part of I think a broader skill set that you need, whether you want to go into sales or whether or not you want to, jump in and actually start something yourself, or whether or not you just want to, come in and be an operations person, like for a company. It's just, you always are trying to convey an idea and get people aligned. And I think sales offers a really, really good, methodology to just allow you to do that. So learning more about it, I think, is beneficial in so many different ways.
Excellent. Good advice, Gabrielle. Thanks. I'm going to try and get one more question in here. We have so many, and we will try, if you're looking for specific answers or resources, we'll try and hopefully Sarah can share some of those links in the chat with you. I'm going to try and get to one more here. In the early stages of trying to access funding and establish your business, how did you manage the stress? Any best practices in work-life wellness, which is so very important right now. And I will throw that out to anyone who wants to jump in on that, because it's probably our last question. Work-life wellness managing.
I can probably jump in if, has anyone else called dibs on that question, or can I jump in?
Go ahead, Gabrielle.
Can I jump in? Okay. I mean, just super briefly, I haven't found a really great way to do that myself. I think a lot of it just, it's probably a really lame answer, but just really enjoying the work that you are doing, because you can't really avoid it. So if it starts to, if it really starts to get on you and it starts to weigh on you, like it's becoming a chore rather than something you're inspired to wake up and do every day, then, find some way to shake it up. I had to do that during COVID, and really kind of get better connected to my team and work in some, like mental health days, like with the whole team, or just, take lunch and we go out together or something like that, just to kind of get us better aligned, just to make us more happy. And then when you see them happy, you get happy. It's just overall beneficial for the culture. So I'd say, that's just at least my 2 cents.
Yeah, and thanks for that, Gabrielle. I would just add, and maybe it is a woman thing, but I kind of, looking back, I know I've had this attitude of, like, I own my own business. The fringe benefits of that I was definitely not enjoying. I was the first one in the morning and I was the last one out at the end of the day, and you're still doing evenings and you're doing weekends. And somebody said to me, Crystal, you're taking all the risks, but you're not enjoying any of the rewards. And I thought, yeah, that sucks. And I'm not doing that anymore. So last night I stayed up late and watched the election. And this morning I didn't set my alarm and I was in here at 9:30. And I'm good with that. And I don't, like, it's the judgment, like, you got to just let that go. You got to set priorities, do what's important, do it on your own schedule, and enjoy the moments that aren't tied up with your work.
Yeah.
I think that's a great piece of advice, Crystal. And, my husband is my biggest supporter and partner in everything we do with our children. But I would come home and say, I pitched this company, this company, this company. I do not know why they're not as excited about getting more girls taking computer science and mathematics, and why they're not interested in internships. It makes no sense to me. How can this be the case? And he would be like, Cathy, you've been thinking about this and working on this for 3 years. So you're on a whole other page. And one of my girlfriends said to me, there's a basic continuum when you're trying to work on a problem. And it's 4 steps: awareness, education, inspiration, and action. Awareness is you're introducing someone to your product or your idea or whatever it is, because they don't know what you can do. If you start educating them on what that capability is, then you have a chance that you might inspire them to act. And in some cases, it might be, in my case, sponsor getting a group of girls going, or it could be buying a new product. And so I had to stop when I was getting worked up and working too much and saying, okay, I need to just keep moving people along this continuum of, if we get more women into STEM, we're going to have more leaders who can make better decisions, et cetera. So I use that continuum in everything I do. If I'm going into a meeting, so I don't get stressed out when they can't get there fast enough, I go, right, I'm at step one. I'm just trying to generate awareness here. So I don't drive myself crazy that I think I can go from introduction to closing a sale in a meeting. So you have to be easier on yourself, but if you really know where you're at with the customer, it helps you not get so stressed that you don't feel you're accomplishing as much as you possibly can. I'm telling you, awareness, education, inspiration, and action, it'll work for you every time. It'll work with you when you're doing your marketing and your sales, and it will help your mental health a whole lot.
Yeah, thanks for that, Cathy. And I think that certainly comes with experience. And certainly throughout all of our panelists here today, we definitely know that passion is the driving force there for sure. So unfortunately, we're over time here. So I am going to have to wrap things up. I know we had a lot of questions we didn't get to. We will try and host a similar session on STEM related business again in the future for sure. But I want to say a huge thank you to all of our panelists for taking time out of their busy schedules. I know all of us have enjoyed the stories and your insights and advice, and we could spend a lot more time together talking about this. But it's definitely important for us to hear and keep these conversations and connections going to inspire and support women entrepreneurs within our regions and across the country. So thank you to Jen Brown, our technical support from NLOWE today. And I believe Sarah has shared some information in chat. So thank you to everyone for joining us today. Stay safe and take care. Thank you.